We also really appreciate you just deciding, of all the breakout sessions that you could have gone to choose to sit and talk about mental health in this afternoon. So thank you for just coming here and sitting down. My name is Sangeetha S. I am the Director of Mental Health Ministries for the Assembly of Bishops. So that thank you is not just from me, but it's from the Assembly of Bishops Mental Health Ministries that we're just very grateful for you valuing mental health with us today. I'm going to pass the mic to Father Vasili, who is going to introduce himself so you can get a chance to meet all of us first.
Do I need to stand up so you can see me? Hi. I'm Father Vasili. I need a louder. Look at I've heard that joke a lot. It's not that funny. We're talking about mental health, okay? I'm Father Vasili Hillhouse, and I've been serving in Anchorage, Alaska, with my wife and 5 boys for 13 years. And I did a master's degree in pastoral counseling, and by the grace of God, in the skin of my teeth, I'm a PhD student at the University of Essex in England, where I'm writing on marriage therapy in St. Sophronia of Essex. And that's how I got roped into this beautiful panel here as a replacement speaker, but I look forward to speaking with you. All right.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rebecca Pearsall. I'm the Director of Clinical Services and Education at St. Basil Academy. I have a background in journalism, and I worked at UNESCO. So it's all about education. And, since wars begin in the minds of men, it's in the minds of men that peace must be constructed. And from that mission, I've continued my mission on. And I'm really honored to be here, and I'm really thankful for all of you. And hope that this can be a useful workshop and that you can go back to your congregations and do the good work.
Hello, I am Dr. Randa Anderson, and I am a licensed clinical psychologist in private practice in the Chicago area. I serve primarily Orthodox Christians. I am also the president of the Orthodox Christian Association of Medicine, Psychology, and Religion. And I have had the great blessing of being a part of Mental Health Ministries since it was just an idea amongst some of us in mental health, and have been a part of the Mental Health Task Force and now a consultant to Mental Health Ministries. And I'm really happy to be here today.
Wonderful. Thank you. And as I said, my name is Sangeetha S. In addition to being the Director of the Assembly of Bishops Mental Health Ministries, I'm also a licensed professional counselor based in Texas. I specialize primarily in trauma, and I do have a split between Orthodox Christian clients and children of immigrants from various backgrounds. So that is mostly where my work is, but my work with the Assembly is in coordinating the amazing group of volunteers and consultants that we have from various backgrounds. We have people in social work and pastoral care, public health, all manner of psychology and therapy and everything in between, working together to make this really an interdisciplinary ministry. So you'll see that in all of the work that we share of ours today. So let's jump right in. Let me introduce you first to the Assembly of Bishops, in case you are not already familiar with our work. The mission of the Assembly is to preserve and contribute to the unity of the Orthodox Church in the United States. So these are the bishops, the representatives of all different jurisdictions coming together. And Mental Health Ministries began in 2019. Mental Health Ministries' mission is to identify and respond to the mental health needs of all Orthodox Christians across the entire United States. So today, what we're going to focus on is exploring how this mental health ministry is actually what it means to be a parish ministry. All of you, as leaders of parishes, you are not just caring for making sure that people show up to Goya and all of the ministries that you've got going on, and people are joining Philoptikos, and somebody's there to make something for the Greek Fest. You're also there to care for the people. That's what ministry means. And so caring for the people means caring for the whole person. So if you swing by the exhibit table that we have for the Assembly of Bishops, you will see that we have some flyers there that say mental health ministry is parish ministry. And it's because this is not some isolated thing that a bunch of mental health professionals got together to talk about mental health in the church. This is actually what makes your ministry more holistic, more complete, and more well-rounded. We're also going to discuss today what it means to identify the role of parish leaders in achieving this mission and providing holistic pastoral care. So I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. Anderson, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about what it means to identify and respond to the mental health needs of Orthodox Christians, and beginning with a survey of the room.
Oh, gosh. So this is a workshop, not a lecture. So let me ask, raise your hand if you've ever taken a CPR class.
Come on.
Most of you. Can I ask, what prompted you to take that class? Anyone? Just shout it out. Knowledge to save a life. Work requirement.
Working with the senior citizen ministry.
Working with senior citizens, so they might be a little more at risk. Okay.
Taking care of my babies.
Taking care of your babies. Okay. In the back?
Was for cash preparation for the food festival.
Prep for your Greek food festival. Yeah, because it might be really hot. People get overheated. They might choke. Absolutely. All right. Now, raise your hands if you have encountered a mental health concern of some sort in your role, let's say in the parish specifically. Wow, most of you. Thank you for being here and hopefully allowing us to share with you some information. Let me ask you now, how many of you felt confident and equipped to respond to those mental health concerns in your parish? Far fewer. Far fewer. The goal of the Assembly of Bishops Mental Health Ministries is to make sure every single hand in this room can be raised when we ask, do you feel equipped to help others with their mental health concern? Why? Why is that important? Let me share a few statistics with you. The National Institute of Mental Health estimates that 1 in 5 Americans experiences a mental illness in their lifetime. So if you have a parish of, 500, how many people is that in your parish? It's a lot, right? Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. 42.5 million Americans experience an anxiety disorder that we know of. About 6 in 10 people with mental illness get no treatment or medication. It's a lot of people walking around in pain and not getting the help they need. And we'll say more about this later. So these statistics are referring to what's happening nationally with everyone. But let's zoom in a little bit and talk about what's happening in our Orthodox communities. One of the first tasks of the Mental Health Task Force of the Assembly was to do a needs assessment to really identify what is it that our Orthodox people need in terms of mental health and mental illness. So this was a self-report, and the survey reported that almost 78% of the participants reported personally struggling with mental health concerns. 86.9% of the participants reported having a family member who has struggled with a mental health concern. The top 5 mental health concerns reported by participants were anxiety, depression, loneliness, grief, and sleep issues. You might not think of that as a mental health concern, but we know that our physical body really matters when we're talking about our emotional health as well. About 69% of participants reported being willing to utilize both clinical mental health resources and clergy and pastoral support. But I also want to share some of my own experience as an Orthodox therapist serving the Orthodox community in Chicago. I'm part of a small group of therapists in the area, and I handle all of the inquiries that come into our website. And even though we have not sought search engine optimization, we get hits from all over the country, not just Chicago. And I can tell you that inquiries have been consistently rising since about 2019. and rising by about 20% a year, far more than we can handle amongst the handful of therapists that are in our little group. And these inquiries come from all across the country too, not just in Chicago. Although you might want to say Chicago's sicker than others. We're really not. It really is. We get inquiries from everywhere. But the point being, people are hurting and they want help, and they Google Orthodox counseling to try and find it. So although we would like to think as Orthodox Christians we're immune to the emotional stresses of life, we're not. And people are seeking help. Let me share another little story from my experience about mental health in our churches. Just this past February, I was invited to speak at the Young Adult League conference in Chicago. And the committee asked me to speak on something mental health related. And specifically, they wanted me to hone in on anxiety and present something on anxiety. And I thought, well, if I call this talk, help with anxiety for young adults, no one will come. So I titled it Finding Peace Under Pressure. And guess what? There were 4 workshops that day, and we each workshop presenter did the workshop twice. I'm not going to say my workshop. The Finding Peace Under Pressure workshop was packed in the first session. There were probably 100 people in the room. This was not true of the other workshops. And the second workshop was probably about 2/3 of the room full. Now, that's not a reflection on the other workshops because they were really great. And my young adult son went to the other workshops and told me how great they were. I do believe it's a reflection on what at least our young adults and what we know of adults as well, and even children, are seeking peace. They're hurting, they're suffering, they want help. And for young adults to pack a room on a mental health related topic, I think is telling us we need to be available as a church to offer that help. So, what is the church doing about assisting our people with their mental health concerns? I'm going to talk about the directory, right? Oh, yeah. Okay. So, as I said, I've been part of Mental Health Ministries since its inception. And the very first project we did, even before the needs assessment was complete, was create a national directory of Orthodox mental health providers. We knew, because people had been asking for years for such a directory, we knew it was going to be helpful. So that is the first thing. Do we have the website for that? At the end. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I'm curious, how many of you were already aware that there is a national directory of Orthodox mental health providers? Raise your hands. About half of you, so that's good. So the other half of you, be informed that the directory has over 150 mental health and substance abuse professionals listed nationwide. Do you know how many states we cover now? Off the top of your head? No. All right. Sorry. Just put Sangeetha on the spot. It is not every state, but we do even have someone in Alaska, I believe. So why a directory? Is it really necessary that people seek help from Orthodox providers? No, not always, but people want it. And I can tell you as an Orthodox provider myself, there's an immediate comfort and rapport that is established when there's a common faith, even if we don't practice it exactly the same. Not everybody fasts, not everybody goes to church on Sunday, but there's an immediate connection. And when a client can say to me, my spiritual father said, and doesn't have to explain what that means, and I know to be respectful of that and work with that, it's very helpful for people. But I also want to point out that this being the first published project of the Mental Health Ministries of the Assembly of Bishops, with full support and approval of our bishops, is a really big deal. And I'm so grateful to the Assembly for recognizing that need. It speaks to their willingness to remove stigma for our people to seek the help that they need. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Rebecca.
Amazing. Edgar, thank you. I'm going to talk about stigma. So the facts are staggering. The facts from Randa is that 6 out of 10 individuals do not seek help. That's a huge, huge amount of people, if you think about it. But there's good news. Obviously, there's the resource that the AOB established, and these amazing resources are there. So they're there for people when they need help. The bad news is exactly what I just said. More than half of the people with mental illness don't ask or receive help for their disorders. But why? And before we go into that, since this is a workshop, I wanted to ask you a question. Let's say you're in church and Uncle Nick is there and everyone's happy to see him, and he falls on the floor with a heart attack. What do you see? How do you see the help happening there? What would happen if you were in that situation?
People crowd around and help.
People crowd around and help. What else? Right, and
Somebody starts CPR to us. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, I hope someone starts CPR. Exactly. Yeah, people will come immediately. Go ahead.
Will come.
Diagnosis is a apologize.
Right away, yes.
That's going to say 911.
911. People will call 911. People will call in experts without even thinking about it. It's a knee-jerk reaction when someone has a physical ailment that people respond with help. Now let's take that same situation and think about Uncle Nick dealing with a mental health issue. Let's say he is there and he starts seeing things and he starts being scared of what he sees. How do you think individuals would respond?
They walk away because they scared.
They would walk away. They would be scared. They'd ignore it.
Completely.
What else? Yes.
I was about to have relatives with that. I didn't walk away from.
Yeah.
He had that situation.
He had that situation.
To move scene.
And what was the reaction?
Well, I didn't walk away from because I knew it. But
Amazing.
people may. I agree.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm out of the pair. I just kind.
That's great. Yes.
Walking away, but it's usually a discussion that starts as to what are the resources and how can we help. And there's a lot of different opinions versus just call 911 and start CPR.
Right.
And we're very limited. We're not like in a country that has an Orthodox counselor.
Oh, you're in the Bahamas. Amazing. Yeah.
It's a delicate issue too. Like the person knows they're bleeding in their hands, they don't usually fight you to help you, but with mental illness, they're like, are you insulting me because you're judging me?
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. People want to know how to help, but sometimes people don't help. I know you had your hand raised. Good. Okay. Yes.
I think a lot of people will just withdraw and stay away from the situation in an effort, the old way to just respect privacy and let it, let that, almost like say, let that shame sort of be with these, with the people that are being affected, let them deal with it, it's their family.
Right.
Respect privacy, but at the same time, we're not actually helping.
Right. What would you do in that situation? Honestly, I mean, sometimes we're scared, and it's okay to be scared. But what would you do in that situation if you saw someone?
Maybe I was the odd one here, but because I have a family member who has it, I would go towards the person.
So you know the vocabulary of how to help that person. Very good. Yes, in the back.
I've been in both situations where you have someone who's dealing with a mental health crisis, and you have to sort of do an immediate assessment as to whether or not they are a risk to yourself or to others. And there have been some instances where I've called police or other responsible agencies, and then there have been other times where you try to sit with someone and see if you can get them some help. So I've seen both sides of that.
And to me, that's beautiful pastoral care, right? To be able to kind of assess and also hold the environment so someone can feel supported. The bottom line is that in these churches, there are so many individuals who mean well, and they're not horrible people, but they don't know how to respond. And I would argue that part of stepping away or part of looking away even has to do with fear. And the fear is about how the brain responds. The brain responds in a fight, flight, or freeze response. So you see something scary, you might want to run away. And there's no shame in that. That's just the way you respond. But I would also argue that hacking the brain, you can, if you're trained, if you have pastoral care, if you have training, you can also step forward and walk with that person in whatever way you need. Thank you for those answers, by the way. The second question is, let's say you're headed to Clergy-Laity and you couldn't go because you were dealing with depression.
Sure.
Would you be comfortable sharing your depression with the Archdiocese? I'm sorry I can't go. I need to go to a hospital to get help with my depression. Or would you say, oh, I broke my leg, and then there may not be any questions. So who would be comfortable sharing that as your reason for absence? You would be comfortable. Great. 1, 2, 3. So that's amazing. And that, to me, says that you're surrounded by individuals who are supporting you and who give you the space to feel safe. Who would be more comfortable saying, my leg is broken, I think I'm going to stay home? I mean, it was a leading question, right? But again, the physical ailment is much more comfortable to talk about in this kind of circle or in this society than the mental health aspect. So people are delaying their treatment. People are delaying getting help. Why do you think that is?
Stigma.
Oh, I didn't know it was up there. Breaking because of stigma. Shame. What is the definition of stigma? It's not up there. Yeah, perfect. Say that again.
Judging.
Judging. You're labeled. Anything else? Scarred. Preconceived notions.
Sense of shame.
Yeah, shame, negativity towards you, all of those things. Do you want to look up the... So the definition is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. We talk a lot about stigma, but do we really know what it is? Do we really know what's at play when people are dealing with stigma about them or their family members? So when we talk about stigma, we also need to talk about how it directly affects those individuals who are helping them. The mom who is trying to help her son. The grandmother who's trying to help her son, or the grandfather who's trying to help his nephew. So stigma very much delays treatment. And there are a lot of negative effects that stigma has on individuals and the way they see themselves. There is research that shows, I'm sorry I'm standing up, I'm very short, and so it's easier to stand so I can see everybody. But the research shows that stigma can reduce hope, lower self-esteem, have increased psychiatric symptoms, difficulties with social relationships, and many more difficulties at work. And I would say also at home. So the bottom line is that stigma affects a person and his or her relationships, and that includes their relationship with God. That includes their relationship with their priest. And so, Father Vasili, I have a question for you. How does stigma show up in a person's pastoral interactions?
I'm also short. I'm not going to get on a ladder, but I'm going to stand up too. Yeah, so 2 ways, and I think the stigma is also related to a skepticism of psychology. But starting with stigma, a person may come to confession and they may understand that there's something going on related to their mental health, but they're too ashamed to say it, and will sometimes try and spiritualize it, with the hope that God could just make it go away. And maybe not be fully honest with the priest because they don't want the priest to think negatively of them because they're afraid. They've heard negative language used around their mental health, and they're afraid the priest is going to judge them for a mental health issue. And as I said, I think related to that is a skepticism of psychology and counseling. And I was talking with Dr. Randa earlier over lunch, and some of it's warranted because there are even some Christian therapists who are just not very good therapists. And there are some non-Christian therapists who will reject the role of a person's spiritual life and faith in their treatment. So I think without stigmatizing or being totally afraid, we can look at science, and we cannot be afraid of science, but we also should be discerning, because we're not afraid of psychology, but some psychologists have an agenda. We're not afraid of science, but some scientists do have an agenda. So I think as long as we're discerning, we can take the best of what modern counseling and psychology can offer us and use that to help our people heal, to become, as St. Sophronian would say, true hypostases, right? True persons, to grow in our personhood towards Christ. And that's the goal of a priest. And when I am in confession and I can tell that someone is struggling with something that's causing them a lot of pain, maybe, of course, right now, a lot of anxiety disorders, maybe depression, but when someone is suffering and someone is in pain, their world gets really, really small, right? We make think of an aperture kind of closing, and they're looking like this, and that's all they can see. They can't see a lot of what's around them because they're focused on their own pain naturally, right? When the body is hurting, our attention naturally goes to the pain. When we're suffering internally, our mind is there, right? And it's hard to get out of it. And what happens is we become more prone to black and white thinking, either or. So either my wife doesn't leave me or I have to kill myself. Those are the only two solutions they can see. If someone's really depressed, either the depression goes away or I have to end it. So trying to coax them out of a black and white scenario that they've created in their head and help them see that there's, maybe, can we take a baby step from that bottom? So maybe the depression's still going to be there, but can we take a step and wait? Can we survive 2 more days? Can we make it a week? Can we make it a month? Right? And so I take it as my responsibility as a priest to be aware of mental health issues, to understand how things like anxiety and depression, and even undiagnosable things like shame and like insecure attachment affect a person's relationship with God. So if I'm suffering from anxiety, there's going to be a loss of trust for others, perhaps even myself, but that's going to get projected onto God. And so someone suffering from anxiety may be afraid of what God is either going to do to them or allow to be done to them. And they're afraid, God, are you going to allow this to happen to me? Are you going to allow this to happen to me? And so when someone is afraid, and they're living in this polarized world, this black and white thinking world, it does affect their relationship with Christ. Because we know Christ is big and above everything, right? He's not black and white. A person is not black and white. They're not a digit, right? They're a human being. They're infinite, right? We are infinite beings. And we lose that perspective when we're in pain and when we're suffering. So mental health is also a spiritual issue. It is very much a pastoral issue. And so I think it's really, really important, especially for us nowadays in a day and age where the young people are talking about mental health. And if they know that they can go to the church and talk to their priest about it, they're going to respect the church so much more. It's going to give them hope. They're going to say, not only can I get help outside, but also my priest can help me. My priest can, and God can help me. But if they think that it's not allowed and the church doesn't talk about mental health, then they're just going to be on YouTube to figure it out on their own. And with the rates we've seen in suicide and depression, anxiety among our young people, we know the church needs to make it really, really clear that we care about their mental well-being and that we can help their mental health. And that we care about it and we have tools to help.
Like that.
I
You did this one.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I think I've said, I love this icon though, the Good Samaritan, right? The one, that's right. The other point I wanted to make is, it's dangerous for clergy and any other parish leaders who are involved in serving others that we don't get a God complex, right? I have a couple surgeons, trauma surgeons in my parish. I talk with them about the God complex. They save lives all the time, right? And you can start to think that you're God. And for us, we have to remember that Christ is central. I'm not the healer. I can offer them the sacrament of confession. I can recommend that they seek help outside with a professional, that I am not a professional counselor. Even with a master's degree and doing a PhD, I'm still not a counselor, right? I'm still not a therapist. I'm a priest. I could offer pastoral instruction, but I'd have to know my limits and stay humble about my ability to help others so that I don't, without thinking about it, but in the back of my mind somewhere, am I trying to play the role of Christ, right? I have to be very careful that Christ stays central in their healing, and that I don't also allow them to project onto me as if I am their healer, because I can't, right? That's not my job, right? Christ has to do it. So I have to kind of get out of the way, help facilitate, but also get my own ego out of the way so they can be fully healed by Christ, but he does it.
Great. Didn't. You're going to make an observation about that icon too?
What?
Yeah, one beautiful thing, and this one doesn't have it. Sometimes you'll see an icon of the Good Samaritan that the innkeepers of Peter and Paul. Oh, beautiful. And that reminds us that, we're not left on our own. That to be healed, we have to be returned into the church. That's also when you talk about Peter walking on water, Christ doesn't say, okay, you and me, we're good together. Let's go and walk off. It takes him back to the ark of salvation. It lets him back into kids. So that's a very important part of the healing process for him.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's essential. And thank you, Father Vasili, for expanding on that. I'd like to talk for a minute about our shared responsibility and expand on what Father Vasili was saying about ensuring that Christ remains central in each pastoral care relationship. So this idea of ensuring that Christ remains central and we can establish and develop a mental health ministry, that's the inspiration behind a presentation that we call Orthodox Bridging. This is, if you have learned about peace of mind, if you've come to our table, you have heard about peace of mind, which I'll expand on in a second. Peace of mind is a skills training in mental health first aid. It's just like CPR, but for the brain. And in the same way that when you learn CPR, you don't become a cardiopulmonary specialist by the end of it, right? You're not a doctor. You learn how to do a short-term intervention until the professionals get there. And then when they do, you get out of the way and you hand them over to the innkeepers or to somebody else who has the skills to take it from there. Mental health first aid is the same thing. It is the basic skills of engaging with a person until you can refer them to a professional who can take it to the next step. Orthodox Bridging is a presentation that the Assembly of Bishops created. We developed that with our team of consultants and experts to help ground that mental health first aid within the mind of the Orthodox Church, to keep Christ central in this care. So I want you to know, as I introduce you to peace of mind here in a minute, when we're encouraging you as leaders to respond to the mental health needs of your parishioners, nobody here and nobody at the assembly is asking you to go and become a therapist. That's our job, right? So what we are asking you to do is to consider how the image of Christ is present in all of your parishioners in need, and it's our shared responsibility to attend to the whole person. That means their body and their mind, their soul, everything. So I want to challenge you as we reflect on this theme of unity here at Clergy-Laity this week, that in Christ we are one. We're challenging you to consider that there is also a unity between the spiritual father, the priest, and the therapist. That's a treatment team, right? In the same way that you have a general care physician, PCP, and you have somebody else on the side for your foot pain and your heart pain and your whatever else you've got going on, you have different specialists. They all collaborate. They form a treatment team. And the same thing happens between a priest and a psychologist or a therapist or a psychiatrist. Also, I want to challenge you to, as you reflect on this theme of in Christ we are one, that this invitation to peace of mind is not exclusive to just priest and therapist, but it's on all of us to bear one another's burdens, right? To learn the CPR so that if somebody needs it, not just if you're assigned to a ministry, not just if you're on the volunteer committee for Food Fest, not just because of that, but because we all have a responsibility to one another, to be one, to be part of that same body, and say, whatever happens to you, if I can do something about it, I will, right? In practice, what that looks like is parish leaders, like Camp, have a responsibility to know when to refer a person and how to refer a person to a mental health professional. In the same way, I, as a mental health professional, and every other mental health professional, has a responsibility to know when to refer our clients, who are Orthodox Christian in particular, back to their priests. I do this all the time with my Orthodox clients. Even when I work with trauma, I just had a client a couple months ago. We've been working together for almost a year. We've been working through a traumatic memory, reprocessing it, trying to heal from it, and I'm coaching her through. We're going through all of the shame and the fear and the struggle and the embarrassment, all the emotions around this trauma. On the back end of us processing it together for what was maybe 6 weeks, 6 sessions, I asked her, I didn't direct her, but I asked her, would you like to take this to confession? And she said, if you asked me 6 months ago, I would have said no, but I am ready now. That's what it looks like to be part of a care team. That's the same thing we're asking all of you to do as leaders. You don't have to be a therapist, but you do have to be willing to listen and engage in a conversation and say, would you be willing to consider meeting with a therapist? Do you need help finding one? Can you afford one? Can I sponsor one for you? Maybe we can go and talk to Father so-and-so. Maybe there's some funding at the church. It'll be anonymous, right? That's what it looks like. So we all share this responsibility to be moved with compassion to one another, just like the Good Samaritan who tended to the suffering man and also entrusted him to the care of the innkeeper. So let me tell you a little bit more about Peace of Mind. Peace of Mind is a training in mental health first aid and Orthodox bridging. The goal of this training is to equip you in upholding this responsibility. I'd like to introduce you to this program and tell you that this is a direct response to the real reported needs of the 2021 needs assessment that Dr. Anderson had just mentioned. This is something that all of our clergy participants, the majority of our clergy participants, said that they wanted. And I believe about 20% of our participants across the board said they would be more likely to seek professional help, and they would be more likely to talk to their priest if they had some training in mental health and knowing how to respond to it well. Peace of Mind is a crisis response training program, like I said a minute ago, just like CPR. It's designed to fit into the context of Orthodox Christian pastoral care. So it is the composite training program of Orthodox bridging developed by the Assembly of Bishops and mental health first aid, which is a pre-existing research and evidence-based program that is internationally renowned, and they have about 10 years of peer-reviewed research saying that it is effective. We don't have 10 years to wait. So we took something that we knew what we could have confidence in as being a solid program, and then we grounded it in our own presentation. This program's intended to enhance the existing pastoral care. So we're not saying that our priests are ill-equipped. We're just saying we can enhance it. We can make it better. Just like I as a therapist and Dr. Anderson as a psychologist have to continue doing continuing ed. We have to continue sharpening our skills. We have to stay on top of the new science. I like to incorporate a lot of neuroscience into my work as a therapist. I like teaching people about their brains because when you go to the mechanic to fix your car, they tell you exactly what thing is wrong, where, and why. I don't know the first thing about cars, but when they explain it to me that way, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, here's $500 to fix that thing. And so it's the same thing in therapy. If you can explain to them, your brain is designed to do this. That fight-flight response that Rebecca mentioned, that's not your fault. That's how your brain is designed. God designed your brain to help you survive. Isn't he wonderful that he loves you that much that you don't have to think about jumping out of the way of a snake? Isn't that amazing? How cool is that? Problem is, sometimes we start avoiding pain that we imagine too, and then we talk about it. So that's what I mean. This program is intended to enhance existing pastoral care and equip you with the skills to be more effective when caring for somebody who's experiencing a mental health crisis or a substance use crisis. Here's a little bit of what is covered. Clergy and ministry leaders who participate in Peace of Mind will explore each of these things: Orthodox Christian anthropology, Orthodox Christian pastoral care, understanding the signs and symptoms of mental health and substance use challenges, understanding how to interact with the person who is experiencing a crisis, and understanding how to connect a person to professional help. So again, you are not becoming a therapist by the end of this, but you are becoming a conduit, right? In the same way that I, as a therapist, view myself as a conduit, that I'm not the healer. Father Vasili just said that. He's not the healer. We're all conduits of God's grace in other people's lives. So you get to play that, you get to have that role. That is all of our responsibility as well. We are equipping you through Peace of Mind to be the Good Samaritan in the context of mental health needs that arise within a parish or ministry. Our vision is to create a standard for exceptional pastoral care through a training program that increases mental health literacy and decreases stigma about mental health. We believe that Peace of Mind's interactive skills training combined with the theological perspective is the difference between being familiar vaguely with the idea of the Good Samaritan and knowing exactly what it looks like to be that Good Samaritan for a person who's experiencing that mental health or substance use crisis. Earlier when we asked you, what would you do if someone was going through a crisis, a lot of you said you want to know how to help. There's this feeling that you don't want to get too involved. Maybe you're afraid, or maybe it's not your business, and so you feel this tension of, I want to help, I feel like I should help, but I'm also scared. It's the same feeling you get when you pass by or you stop at a red light and there's a homeless person on the corner, and you're thinking, is it okay for me to roll down my window? Is it safe? Are they scary? Are they dangerous? And it's because we're not familiar with what we're facing. We don't see them in that moment as the image of Christ standing there on the corner. We see them in the moment as that fear processing center. Is this a threat? Is this a threat? Am I safe? What do I do? I don't know. I've never thought about it. Never thought about doing something about it. What Peace of Mind does is it takes that fear, it places it right here in the middle and says, what are we going to do about this? How can we do something about it? So, as we wrap up here in the last few minutes, because I know there might be some questions, I want all of you to remember this one quote from our Peace of Mind training. This is specifically from the Orthodox Bridging part of the presentation, that although we cannot solve the problem of illness, we can solve the problem of someone suffering alone. And we can invite someone into community to find Christ, the suffering servant, in the midst of their own suffering. That's the heart of Orthodox Bridging and why we do Peace of Mind. And I want to share a few numbers here. Earlier, Dr. Anderson put me on the spot with numbers, and I'm like, I'm not Rain Man. But I do have some numbers. I do have some numbers I want to share with you, that since the launch of Peace of Mind in 2022, we have now done 17 Peace of Mind events that have resulted in 319 total leaders trained in Peace of Mind, including mental health first aid. 166 of them, about 52%, were clergy, including 2 bishops, and 153, about 48%, are lay ministry leaders. The lay participants in our Peace of Mind trainings have shared with us after the training, well after the fact, that they felt equipped and confident to engage in conversations about mental wellness with their fellow parishioners during coffee hour. And that's all we're asking anybody to do, is when someone says that they're stressed or they're not getting enough sleep or they're going through something tough, that you don't shy away from that conversation, that you don't say, oh, that stinks, right? But instead you say, how are you really doing? Do you need anything? Can I help you? The clergy participants of our Peace of Mind trainings have also shared with us that they believe Orthodox Bridging is essential to framing mental health within the mind of the Orthodox Church. One of the priests at our most recent all-clergy training events shared that the training in Peace of Mind opened the door for a long overdue and vulnerable conversation about mental health with his brother priests at that training.
But
From what I was told, I wasn't there, several of the clergy needed to step out and just comfort one another.
Right.
So the reason I bring that up is because that's the ripple effect of this training. It's not just about you and I learning how to help somebody else who's struggling because woe is them, but it's about acknowledging that we are one and that we all have mental health needs. You have a brain, so you have mental health needs. We all need each other. And we all have this deep longing to experience the love of Christ through relationships with one another. So just like I've shared my one big takeaway for all of you, I'd like to pose the same question to each of our speakers here, our esteemed experts. Starting with Dr. Anderson, what is one thing you want all of our participants here to remember from this workshop, and what is one challenge you'd like everyone here to take home?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I did give it some thought. It's short and sweet. Just remember that as Orthodox Christians, we too are susceptible to concerns with our mental health, problems with our mental health, and the church is eagerly and efficiently, I will say, trying to help the people in our communities by creating programs and resources so that no one has to feel alone in trying to either help themselves or someone else. And my challenge for you today is to please go to the Assembly website, find the directory of Orthodox mental health providers, plug in your state, and look at who the therapists are in your state. And if you don't know them and you'd like to maybe vet them and know if they are people you would like to refer to, give them a call. Say, hi, I'm from Saints Constantine and Helen, and I want to know a little more about your practice so I can refer to you. Have a conversation with the providers in there, or at least know who they are. That's part one. Part two is to please look at that directory, and if you know Orthodox therapists who are not listed, please send them the link. Let them know it exists, because although we are trying super hard to get the word out, I know there are therapists out there who are unaware that the directory is there and who would love to be listed. Let them know about it and encourage them to be listed. It's free. It's an easy application to fill out. It does require the therapist priest to acknowledge that they are a member in good standing of their parish, but it does not require the priest to write a letter of recommendation, which has stopped some people from applying because they think, I don't want to bother my priest. No, it's one question, and it's very easy. So please take a look at the directory, encourage providers to get listed and make use of it.
Awesome. It's amazing. I have so many thoughts, but I think even when I was listening to Sangeetha, one of the things that really stands out to me is that language matters. So the language that you use about yourself, about others with mental health challenges, matters. And so one of the things that you can do in your congregation, in your community, is to use person-centered language in your next conversation. So what is person-centered language? It's focused on the person. So, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of these, and I've made this mistake as well. So, for example, he has a drug habit. He is a person who's struggling with addiction. It's an addicted baby. This baby was exposed to opioids. This is a baby first. It's a person first. So I see you all taking pictures. That's great. And, and also be aware that reducing stigma or fighting stigma is also checking in on yourself and understanding how you're contributing, and forgive yourself for doing that, because we've all contributed in some way. And then learning the new language. So, one of the things I was talking about with the group was we want to almost destigmatize stigma initially to be able to know what we're saying and know how to change it. We need to know ourselves before we know how to change things. So use person-centered language, learn the language of peace of mind, because then it's a common language where we're all helping one another and we all can receive help as well. We all need help and we all want to give help. I have so much more, but I'll pass it on to you.
Hey, I've only got 20 minutes to speak, so just kidding. A couple of things for the laity who are here to go back and encourage in a positive way that's constructive your priests to bring in peace of mind and to develop their own awareness of mental health, and to encourage him to help your fellow parishioners in your parish educate themselves on mental health, so that your parish becomes a very safe space for people who are struggling. It's good to find an Orthodox therapist. I'm in Alaska, there's one. Alaska's 2.5 times the size of Texas. Not everyone can see that one Orthodox therapist. I'll say this, it's more important to find a good therapist than an Orthodox therapist. So what I've done is I built a little database for my area by soliciting my own parishioners who have dealt with a psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, and got their recommendations, so that when someone is struggling, I can give them a referral list and they can go there. Some of them I've met, but I feel like I don't have to vet them. My parishioners have vetted them. They've had good experiences and have gone back and said, my priest said to add this, is this okay? And work with them. So I would say encourage the clergy to do that. And the last thing I'll say is I work on our family wellness ministry over the metropolis of San Francisco. And our San Francisco metropolis web table, you can pick up the flyers there, but we are doing a little workshop on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Right here or next door. I encourage you to come back to that and see how you can develop a family wellness ministry within your parish. So you're there and you're equipped to minister not just for major mental health issues, but to help build up families, to marriages, to help the elderly and all these other areas. So those would be my takeaways.
Thank you. So I gave you my big takeaway at the start, and I want to give you my challenge, which is for all of you to join our mission. With Peace of Mind, our mission is to start incorporating that training as a standard of pastoral care practice and training, starting with our seminaries. Right? We're not just trying to train the clergy who are clergy now, but the people who are on track, so to say, for ordination from the time that they are in seminary. So we've already begun. We did a training at St. Tikhon's. We've done a training at Holy Cross this year. And we have already begun those conversations to become a staple at the seminary, so that each graduating class, particularly the M.Div students, will receive training in peace of mind. And we do have to get all the people who are not in seminary too, and that's where you come in handy. And this is not just for clergy. This is for lay ministry leaders too, because you are the ones who are in charge of the youth ministries and the every other ministry. It's if the ministry leader, if one person in the ministry knows mental health first aid, it's enough. You know who to call, right? Just like you said, oh, we have doctors in the church and everybody knows who the doctor is, right? It's the same thing. You just need at least the camp director, at least the lead person of each ministry should be trained in peace of mind. So the way you do this, first of all, start a conversation in your parish, get your parish priest's approval, collaborate with other parishes, because there is a cost. These are packages. We have to fly our facilitators out to you. If you can collaborate with the other parishes in the area, you can split that cost and make it really reasonable. The packages that we have are roughly $100 per person, which you get a 3-year certification by the end of this, and that's a good deal. We're over here paying thousands of dollars for our CEs every year to do continuing education. So we're offering you something that for $100, 8-hour training, you get certified in mental health first aid for 3 years, and you get to be an asset to your parish and your community. And think about how many people you can influence, right? We said 1 in 5 people are struggling with the mental health disorder. If you've got a 500-person parish, you got a lot of people to help. If you know 200-something people in your personal network outside your parish, think about your workplace, your community, random people you see at the gas station, so many opportunities for you to help if you just had the skill, if you just didn't feel so afraid that you didn't know what to do or that you were afraid you were going to say something wrong. So collaborate with other parishes. And then the last bullet point is what we want you to contact us with. When you are ready, hopefully sooner rather than later, contact the AOB. The email address is on the next slide, mentalhealth@assemblyofbishops.org. All we need are, what dates do you want us to come? We can do a 1-day package or we can do a 2-day package. Where is it going to be? What city, what church? And then which of our different package options do you want to do? So we've got 4 packages. There's 1 day and there's 2 day. And there's also options to have 1 facilitator or 2 facilitators. So if you have only 1 facilitator, we've capped it at 15 participants. If you have 2 facilitators, we've capped it at 30 participants maximum. So we might have to do more than 1. But I want to invite all of you to join our mission and start working on scheduling peace of mind training in your area today. So this last slide is the last thing I want to leave you with. That QR code leads directly to the Peace of Mind page where you can see our brochure. You can see all the information that you can take back to your parish priest, and you can share all of the information I gave you, like the objectives, the mission, the vision of peace of mind, all of the components and the learning objectives are all right there. That mentalhealth@assemblyofbishops.org is our main email address. So if you have people you want to send to apply to our directory and they're not sure where the link is, send it there. If you have people who are curious about, maybe you have a mental health professional at your parish who's willing to volunteer and be a consultant with our ministry, I could use the help, so send them my way. And I'll take it out of that general inbox and start a conversation from there. But I just wanted to thank all of you on behalf of the Assembly of Bishops for making mental health a priority, for sitting here on a somewhat stuffy room and talking about a very heavy subject that I know as we talk about it here, you're not just hearing about a program. You're probably thinking about someone that you know who's struggling. Or maybe you're thinking about your own struggles there too. So we acknowledge that. We thank you for having the courage to sit here, your commitment to making this a something that we can all join together in being one and doing the good work, as Rebecca said. So are there any questions? I know we're just at our time. Oh, lots of questions. Okay, let's start right here.
Mine is really a plea to priests. We say, we pray for priests for peace 21 times in our divine liturgy. I think that's such an important door that can be opened to help break the stigma, open the conversation, make it not such a shame factor, because our church is already doing it and we don't talk about it at all. We don't I know we say peace in the world, but there's a lot of peace and spirit, and that's got to be referring to mental health. So please open that door early.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And I think just acknowledging that, or having a sermon series, or even just one sermon where that's acknowledged is enough. If the leaders start to have conversations, it starts to make it okay. That's why the younger generations, the more celebrities talk about it, the more it becomes okay. And so some of the reason that we're getting increased numbers in all of these stats is it's becoming more okay to talk about it, right? To report it. And we all know there's more cases of underreporting than overreporting. I think I saw your hand first. Okay, go ahead.
So you've had 300 some people go through this, and you've said it before, I don't remember who said it, but therapy is expensive. I've used the directory, actually I emailed Dr. Randa a couple of years ago, and not everyone is necessarily dealing with an extent of mental health that requires like a full professional. But I think that there are so many people that could benefit from just having a conversation and having availability. So is there any plan perhaps to take like the people that have maybe gone through this training and create like a network where somebody could just call someone just because they need somebody to talk to? I mean, I know that there are many times where I have called my priest, but I can't call him all the time. And I also don't want to put that additional burden constantly on our clergy. And maybe if there's more of like a network we could develop. I'm just wondering if maybe that there's anything in the works for that.
There, That's a really great question and a great idea. And I think you're bringing up a good point that not everyone is ready or feels the need to commit to full therapy. To answer your question quickly, we have not started developing that. However, that conversation has come up in a slightly different context in terms of clergy wellness, because what you're describing is essentially a support hotline or support groups or some kind of just general support. So that conversation has begun, but not necessarily with laypersons. It's been more clergy wellness oriented. And so that doesn't mean that it won't go in that direction, but I just want to give you an accurate representation of where we're at right now.
Is there somebody I can connect with? Because if that does happen, I would very much like to.
Okay. Well, connect with me afterward. Okay. Do you have something to add to that?
Just as a step up from that, does everyone know what 988 is?
Yeah.
Okay. Suicide hotline, and it's a 24-hour hotline, and that you can call for individuals who are struggling with a mental health crisis or mental health issues. So I just want to make sure, because a lot of people think of 911, but 988 should be at the forefront.
I want to add one more thing. When you go to the directory, we've linked on there. There's a whole list of hotlines for all kinds of things, right? There's a sexual assault hotline. There's a domestic violence hotline. There's a child abuse hotline. There's all kinds of specialized hotlines. So 988 is the suicide lifeline. There are also, when you go to the directory landing page, which let me go back here so you can see it. When you go to that QR code on the corner, you'll see there's a little blurb at the top. And it says something about crisis needs. And we've linked to databases, essentially, of different hotlines. So if you see the word warm line, W-A-R-M, warm line, that is essentially what she was describing a minute ago, which is you're not necessarily in a crisis, right? You're not feeling suicidal. You just need someone to talk to. So a warm line is a general support hotline. And so there's all kinds of resources like that. You can go to our directory and then find the link from there, so you don't have to go and Google for that. But those are not necessarily our peace of mind folks, but those are people who have probably gone through very extensive training. I used to work on a suicide hotline. That was about 40 hours of training that I did. Peace of mind is about 8 hours of training. So please be assured, just like Father Vasili said, they may not be Orthodox, but they are probably still very good. So that is a resource that is available to you, and I'm glad you mentioned hotlines. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you if there's any discussion about establishing any policy about thirst, because we talk about everybody else, and everybody else wants to go to the clergy for support. Is there any discussion about establishing with the Assembly of Bishops a policy about well-being for priests? Because Father knows this, I'm sure. When I see fellow clergy that they just started as priests and have family and everything else, it's very difficult to get used to what you have to do in a parish, because you have so many things to juggle with and you have this responsibility. And if you become a spiritual father really quickly, which sometimes happens because there's a need, there's another important too. So we have people who have gone through burnout that they don't even know about it. At some point, they're going to go to a life crisis, which is going to be even worse. So what I'm saying is, in Greece, we have discussed this back in the day for a long time in the synod. I don't know if this discussed here to establish some steps. I don't know, for the priest to have a clergyman with experience or maybe a therapist that can work with to go through this type of situation. So and that way, we're going to burn out lots of priests, and we're going to have just people serving in churches not being able. I'm not saying they're not willing, but they will not able to actually minister better.
Thank you for that question and for being honest and real with the challenges that clergy face too. There are a few things going on, not necessarily within the Assembly of Bishops, but within the Greek Archdiocese and within the Orthodox Church in America. So there are different levels of, let's say, support that clergy can seek. Certainly, clergy are welcome to check out the directory if you do want one-on-one support with a therapist, number one. Number two, there are peer learning groups for clergy and clergy wives. These are not support groups, they are not therapy groups, but support comes out of it. And learning and mutual sharing occurs. I see, Father Jerry, can I put you on the spot? Father Jerry Markopoulos is a peer learning group facilitator for clergy under the Center for Family Care under the Greek Archdiocese. Within the OCA, there's a program called Thriving in Ministries, which has similar types of groups. So we're building resources. Does that answer your question, Father?
We're just wondering if this could be actually enforced in some way.
Enforced in some way, yeah.
Yes, it should be mandatory for all clergy to have, not maybe mandatory is not a word, but it should be there, and they should know about it, and this should be mentorship and guidance.
So I think
People to seek help, and we're not telling them, you have this, I'm here,
And-
as a priest, another priest, or somebody who's in contact with them.
yes, sadly,
Too late sometimes.
I agree, and I think sadly it does become too late, and then that priest has to be referred to some sort of inpatient facility, and probably all of us know priests who've been in that situation. I'm not aware of anything mandatory. Maybe someone else in the room is. I do think that as we move into seminaries providing both training like Peace of Mind and support through peer learning groups, because I believe we are also going into the seminary with those as well. We're taking more of a mind of wellness, and there are going to be some workshops on clergy wellness, I believe tomorrow and or Thursday, so that we can learn more about those